Hi, folks. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Shane Sparks of Enrollment Resources, and I'm extremely happy to have my friend Joe Girard. Little known fact, Joe actually worked with us, gosh, how many years ago was it,
Over,
Joe? A
over
while.
10, yeah.
Over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Joe was an admissions guru back then who briefly worked with Enrollment Resources, went off to do great things in sales training, admissions training, and is our guest today to talk about a playbook for high performing admissions teams. So, Joe, we reconnected, I don't know, like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I remember in that we went and had a coffee and kind of caught up. And I remember your insight and your kind of like perspective on how to make admissions teams really very successful. I was super impressed with. And I remember you had some stats. We're not going to get into them yet, but you had some stats that were, I think, compelling and really well thought through on kind of what benchmarks are for admissions teams,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about that. The Actually, just give a little introduction to yourself first. I didn't do a great job of
Oh,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Saj, what's going on, man? Yeah, my name's Joe Girard, and I worked in education for probably about 15 years.
Yes.
Probably post-secondary, way back in the day, that was like my first thing, and worked my way through admissions, some admissions management to on the executive team for a company, and built open new locations and sites, and traveled around, did all that kind of stuff, did all the stuff my mom told me to be a good boy, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I ended up starting my own company, and then really what I learned, I mean, from being on the dark side of education, man, is the same problems that we have in education really transferred to a lot of companies. So I'd work with all sorts of companies around the world, from small, like, entrepreneurial type of one-on-one to large multinational, big, long cycle selling. And it's all the
Yeah.
same stuff, right? The same problems that you guys are having are the same challenges I have with clients around the world in all different languages. And really, what I learned in the education space really helped cut my teeth for all of that other stuff. And so we've been able to help companies from, that of course, getting those new leads to conversions all the way up to signing people up for contracts. It's the same stuff in education. But, it's been pulling me back in. And so I've been doing a lot of work with different schools. And, Shane and I've recently reconnected and talked about sort of, where the challenges are in admissions. And even though the times have changed and there's new technology, there's new opinions, there's new stuff, the fundamentals haven't changed. But I think that people have gotten away from fundamentals, so we'll get into that too. But
Yeah.
that's my passion is really I get real nerdy with sales. This actual statement here, "Don't be a sales
Yeah.
weirdo," comes from some work I did with one of your clients like that 10 years ago when I was listening to one of her calls, and we were listening to it together. And I said, "Man, Jessica, you're getting weird." And she goes, like, "You're a salesy weirdo." She goes, "I'm a salesy weirdo." So she made a meme of me and we posted it on Facebook. And that's how this started. And that's been the for the last 10 plus years, the cornerstone of my whole business is we're all weird as a whole, but we don't want to become weirdos. We don't want to become not who we are. And when I do mystery shops, I will get into all this stuff. But when we get into what's happening in admissions and in business, people are forgetting that the other end of the phone, the other end of that email is a person. And we're trying to
Yeah.
help those people. So that's really the cornerstone of my
Okay. So it seems to me we kind of have a fundamental chicken and egg problem
absolutely.
in that we've got, the tonic for low enrollments is more leads, right? Which then is rewarding low admissions performance,
Yep.
right? And then you get in this dysfunctional cycle because it's like, hey, the leads aren't good, therefore the enrollments are low. Your opinion on that is a bit different. And what I appreciate about your perspective is that you're very systematic in how you think about it.
Yeah.
So maybe to start in this, the first thing we could maybe chat about is you've got this idea of like conversion systems.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to that a bit and just what's a
Yeah.
conversion system?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we just worked with a client last week, and we brought in a new director of admissions because she's more data focused than everybody else. So we
Mhm.
need somebody who is that piece of the puzzle that really understands that we can make better decisions through data. And data isn't just how many starts do we get, how much revenue, what's the number, but the percentages along the whole pathway, that whole customer journey. And so
Yeah.
for me to be able to hit some crazy targets that I did in admissions, at the same time I was going back to university, I couldn't just work harder. I couldn't do more. I didn't need more leads. I needed to do the best work I could with what I was being given because I was up against it. Even I had a boss that was like, if you don't hit these targets, we're not going to pay you because I had to put some skin in the game. And so it
Right.
was very intense. But in order to do it, we have to break down, how many leads do we need? How much contact do we need to make? What happens when this happens? What's happened when this happened? If in order to hit 4 million, we work all the way back to what do we have to do each day? And we can't control the outcomes. We can only control what we do. So everything
Mhm.
we do, we break down to what's, did we do it? Yes or no? Is it an activity that we can actually control? And when I start working with admissions teams and any companies, when we start to put it into framing it around activities, not performance, they breathe easier and they realize, oh man, well, what should I be doing then? Because everybody's busy. They don't need more stuff to do. They just want to know what stuff they should be doing.
So what are some examples of that?
For example, like we've got Matt, I printed this out earlier, but like a booking cadence. Like what are the calls? Like what do we do when we're trying to book people in to come see us? People are just making lots of calls, doing lots of stuff, but it's falling on deaf ears. They're not making contact and they're not booking appointments. So how do we really structure every single piece of that puzzle to make sure
Mhm.
that there's an intention, there's a purpose at each level? When we do our meetings, we try and set it up for it's a 45-minute meeting. We break down what goes on in that 45-minute meeting. A lot of times we say, I hear from every company, well, it sometimes is this and it depends. I'm like, well, what's the sometimes and what does it depend on? So if we can break down everything into sort of an if then statement, then you have the opportunity to say, okay, well, what can we control? Because some people are stronger here, some people are weaker here. So we want to look at the whole customer, like I said, the whole customer journey and the whole pipeline and find out where those gaps are and work on smaller things rather than the boss coming in and saying, hey, we need more starts. We don't
Mhm.
have a magic more start button. We need to know what's the thing I can control that's going to impact us, not today, but usually 60, 90 days out. We need to start putting action here and not stealing from tomorrow.
Right. Okay, so one bit of feedback we're getting is that contact rates are getting trickier,
Yeah.
right? We've got it's an AI world which is habituating people into being, more so than ever, like engaging with the machine. You're a real person. You're scary. I don't want to talk to you,
Yeah.
right? What is a what would you prescribe, or what's a systematic solution to like a contact rate problem?
Well, I've been doing a lot of mystery shops and just out of curiosity to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And not just in education, but across the board. Even like a
Mhm.
self-storage company, we did a bunch for them. And what we see is that a lot of times the process of making that initial contact is really treated as administrative, not as a person to person. So it's kind of like, people are calling and they have more information than they've ever had before, but they're
Mhm.
more misinformed than ever. Our job is not to give them more information and say, hey, it's your problem. Our job is to make their problem our problem and figure out a way to help them see that we're guides, not an extension of the website. So every
Mhm.
piece that they're doing, I remember my mom telling me when she went back to school way back in the day, the hardest thing she ever had to do was pick up the phone and ask for help. And if the people on the other end aren't helpful, then what are we doing here? And so what I found is people weren't getting back to me soon enough. They were just saying, hey, refer the website. They're doing a bunch of stuff that wasn't helping me, which is making me more confused and making it my job to figure out what I needed to do before I talked to them. And they were holding all of their best stuff until I would come in and have a call or see them. So at the front end, how can we increase the amount of value and guidance we're giving before we even talk to the person? That's where the biggest gap is.
Okay, so I did a talk, gosh, a couple weeks ago to some financial aid people on, how they can help with admissions.
Yeah.
And it was basically, the talk was this: you'd be nicer, be more compassionate. But as I started to think it through, and so I want to go check this one and get your impression of it.
Mhm.
As I started to think it through, I realized the moment of inquiry for a lot of our non-traditional prospects, right, is intensely emotional, right?
Mhm.
And I think of it like, you know, uh, it's similar to like going to an AA meeting for the first time, in that, well, no, hear me out. Hear me
I like it.
out.
I'm with you. I'm
Because,
with you.
well, because there's, my life's become unmanageable. and
Yep.
I've been avoiding the problem for as long as I can. And something's happened where I have a moment of clarity and go, you know what? I can't keep doing this. Right. And the length of that moment of clarity, like we've all had those, whether it's,
Mhm.
some dysfunctional behavior or a relationship that we realize this is nuts. I can't do this anymore. Right. There's that moment of lucidity, which for us manifests in somebody filling out a form, right? Because they go, you know what? Screw it. I'll do it, even though they're asking for a phone number. I know somebody's going to phone me and it makes me feel icky, but like, whatever, I'm willing to do it. But it's like, how long does that moment of clarity last? Right. And so we know that urgency on returning on speed to lead is critical, but we've never really figured out why.
Yep.
And my personal opinion now is because that moment of clarity where it's like my life's unmanageable, I need to do something about that.
Mhm.
That can change pretty quickly. Have a better day. I don't know, something better happens, and I can revert back to my dysfunction.
Yep.
So, what it seems to me would be important in part of your model is that it's not just the function of speed to lead. Hey, I got you on the phone now. I accomplished that task, and now but with that moment of clarity comes um, a great need for empathy and like, okay, you're in the right place to
Mhm.
help, kind of energy. Am I? Is
You're,
that
you're, yeah, you're 100%. There is. I got a couple notes that I'm looking at. One of them is, I think the challenge, anybody that is in admissions watching this, you guys know the magic that happens. I mean, I used to have people say, why do people come into your office very happy and then leave crying? What did you do to them? And they're very excited about what's happening next because you've had the right conversation. The challenge right now is a lot of stuff is happening online, happening on the phone, happening out there. People don't know what to do with that. Our job is really to, as soon as we receive that lead, there is a timeline. You're bang on. There's a window. Everything is there's constructive tension that happens, and every minute and hour that goes by, the tension loosens. And maybe they go, I can't do this, or I'm going to go somewhere else, or the priorities change. I want to go to the beach. We live on the island here in British Columbia, so I'm going to go golfing. Whatever that is, it's our job to capture that. There's a book, Insight Selling, actually. This is a great book that they talk about is your offer has to have three things. It has to resonate, differentiate, substantiate, which is exactly this. It has to be meaningful to them. It has to show why you're different, and it has to be believable. If one of those things aren't in place, then people don't take action. So if we do a good job of getting them excited, showing why we're different, but we don't show them how they can actually do it, they're going to go, well, that's good for somebody else, but not for me. If we don't get them excited, they're going to say, I see why you're different, and I can definitely do it, but it's just not a big priority, right? And if we don't show why we're different, they're going to call around and look for somebody else. So our job is to make sure all three of those things are there, and at the same time, show them what they might not be seeing. One of the things I used to say on the phone right away is I say, let me talk to you about your transferable skills. Let's talk about the hidden job market. Something that is a bit contrarian to what they're already looking at, that I have something valuable that they might need, that they haven't thought about. If I'm just saying, let me answer your questions about this, and we get into a Q&A thing about our business, and they say, hey, when do you want to come talk to us? They say, I have everything I need. And now they're going away more confused, and we actually didn't help them. Our job is really as career change experts, not just admissions advisors, but people that know you're here and you're trying to go here. And I'm going to, whether you buy from me or not, I'm going to show you some pathways that are going to help you make the changes you want to make. Even if you don't decide to go to school, they're going to come to you because the value is in the conversation. The value is in seeing you or talking to you, not in the value of the product.
and that's why we call them admissions advisors or
Mhm.
admissions counselors,
Yep.
not, I don't know, admissions coordinators.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other part is that, we have to understand that the people that are calling that are ready to buy, sometimes they're not. And there's a bunch of people in the market that are hidden opportunities that come from those conversations. So when we get referrals, we talk about what we're actually selling, we're selling the value of that conversation. So a referral isn't, do you know anybody that wants to take our nursing program? A referral is, do you know anybody that wants to have this conversation? Because this conversation is where the value is. And if you're not selling that conversation, you're missing all the opportunities because you're waiting
Okay,
for the market to tell you.
so in the model that you advocate for, those the nature of those conversations is prescribed throughout the whole
Yep.
journey, right? And I remember when we went for coffee, and like Saj, I'd like you to weigh in on this one in a sec. We started talking about like conversion benchmarks,
Yep.
right? Like what should a conversion rate be? And we get that question a lot. Like what should I
Yep.
convert on leads? We run a little client mastermind. I asked them if they had a number. We started in our virtual advisor product. We're starting to benchmark
Mhm.
conversion rates from an aggregate of clients so we can kind of see the average. That's a new feature that's coming out soon.
Hey, yay.
Yay. It's cool. So your numbers were surprising to me because maybe take us through what the numbers, what you think the numbers are and what they represent in terms of like sophistication or maturity of the school.
So you're talking about like the conversion ladder kind of thing, like how like.
Lead, yeah, the conversion ladder.
For sure.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, really what it came down to, it was something that I've always observed for myself and for other people as I've looked at schools in all sorts of markets. And, at 5%, and like any business, 5% lead to start or even lead to registration, depends how you're making sure we're closing. But that 5% is really you're just an order taker. So if you're around, under 10, but around 5 to 7, you're just taking orders. You're taking what the market gives you of people saying, hey, I'm put my hands up, and you could just hire a bunch of admin people to do that typically. When you start to go from 5 then up to 10%, now you've got some processes. You've got some things that you can repeat. You've got some sales discipline. You've got some things in place that you can now start to control. And you have people that are a little bit more intentional. So you have people that are taking it serious and maybe even more accountable to the leads. To get over to 10, 10, 15, now you're building best practices that you're starting to see across the team. And when I talk about the percentage, I'm talking about like an overall like aggregate for the team. So, there's always going to be your high performers. Sometimes those people are hard to replicate, so we don't have to worry about them. I'm looking at taking C-level players, bringing them up to at least B, and those B-level players, bringing them up so your total average goes up. When you start to build best practices, you have shared language, shared value, shared process. That's where you get over 10 to 15. To get 15%, now you've got to have them documented. You got to have them managed. You got to have people testing and doing quality assurance. And to get over 20%, which is absolutely doable, you're testing, you're evaluating, you're improving. You're working on every single piece of it. When you're looking at your reports, if you converted 8 out of 10, you don't look at those 8, you look at those 2. You look at what did we miss? Is there something we're not doing? For me, I used to look at what programs I'm converting on. And I'd say, why am I converting less on this program than this set of programs? Oh, because maybe I don't believe in it. I'm not strong on the labor market. I need to find out. We look for the gaps in the numbers and the data in our process to improve. And when we find the winning combinations, we spread them across the team. So
Okay, so I want to clarify these because I think this is an important point. So the 5% is, and we're talking lead, like this isn't contacted lead to enrollment. This is straight up lead to enrollment.
yeah, yeah.
5% is you're going through the motions.
Mhm.
10% is, hey, you're getting like between 5 and 10% is okay. We got some okay systems in place. We're reasonably proficient at the work. 10 to 15% is okay. The team's pretty dialed in, and there's mature systems, and you're kind of, I don't know, 75% of the way there. Over 15% is like, okay, this is a everything is orchestrated. There's like a strong culture that is manifest through the admissions process. It's dialed in. Saj, I want to stress test this one against Saj. You've been around a long time. Saj was involved with a CRM company for what, 20 years. You had access to admissions data all over the place. You agree, disagree? Like, let's beat up our friend Joe here a bit.
Remember, Saj, we go way back
Oh,
too.
you're muted. Saj, you're muted, bud.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, Saj and
Saj met me when I was just a little baby enrollment admissions
oh,
guy.
okay. Oh, Saj might have mute problems.
That's good.
There
No,
he
I'm
is.
good. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about
Hey.
Hey, so I think Joe's right on the money. I think if you're enrolling lead to start, anywhere below 10%, the sky is falling. You've got to really dig deep and look into that. 10 to 15%, you're somewhere between average and good. Anything over 15%, you're doing really well. I got to reframe things a little bit, Joe. So I'm going to touch the third rail here of admissions, which is constraints. So when a school starts missing start goals, the conversation can quickly become emotional. Marketing says admissions isn't following up. Admissions says the leads are weak. Leadership just wants the number fixed. How do you help a school separate opinion from diagnosis and identify the real constraint in the enrollment system?
Um, Yeah, I think I'm dealing with that with a client right now where we've got, there's multiple people from, they've got somebody like call center, they've got admissions reps, they've got registration coordinators, registrars. There's a bunch of people handling all this, and of course, marketing and ops. And weirdly enough, none of them see eye to eye, right? So, and everybody thinks it's somebody else's thing. When you go and start from the data and work backwards, we did an activity called "What should we start doing, stop doing, do more of, do less of," that kind of stuff, and just really break it down. There's all these small little nuanced conversion points, even just the handoff, how we cross edify between, an admissions advisor to a registration coordinator. How do we make sure that we're securing that follow-up, that it's not confusing to the student, and the student is just going along for the ride. So what we do is we look at all the pieces and just make sure that we do have a fundamental truth, which is we want to help these guys win. We want to help our students win. So what does that mean to make them win? My process is called "What does good look like?" Right? So when we start to break down what good looks like in admissions, that starts to then spider out to all the other departments. So that if everybody's accountable to what good looks like, from how do we handle the lead, how do we hand off that lead, how do we receive that lead, what do we do with that lead, how do we hand that lead next, how do we ensure we secure that start, how does ops play a part, how does marketing play a part? Because I know like from, not just education, but sales and marketing is always like cats and dogs. They want the same thing though. Sales doesn't tell marketing what's actually happening, and marketing doesn't tell sales what they're going to do to them. And so there's always this like and it's usually there's just a lag when it comes to missing starts and the emotional side of it. We'll get into that after if you want, Shane, about how we map out run rates. We just again go into the fact that the data is what tells us that that the starts come from best practice activities. And if we're scrambling, most companies I talk to are scrambling to try and hit that today number. And it's like, I call it a payday loan. They're taking from tomorrow to pay today, and they're constantly in this back pedal. We got to start putting things in place now that impact us. So we build a foundation. We have like a wait list mindset before we have wait lists, because that's how you make sure that you're creating urgency for the student, not for your business. And the students can smell that. That's being a salesy weirdo.
So let me just ask a follow up then. In your playbook, which is incredibly helpful, it's really meaty, full of awesome stuff, which we're going to be sharing as well. I want to talk for a second about pipeline management and avoiding that last minute scrambling. So in your playbook, you use the phrase, "Don't just fill the next start, build future starts." What does that look like in the real world for an admissions team that's used to scrambling right before each intake?
Yeah, well, I mean, that it's something that I had to learn the hard way. Especially I remember, like, I think it was like my third month, and I got a call from the boss saying, "Hey, why did you say you had 40 something students and you only had 28?" I'm like, "Because that's the best thing." He's like, "You gotta know your numbers, man. You gotta know." That was Patrick. He beat the crap out of me. And it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, how do I make sure that I'm going to hit these starts? And the last, like, if we look at, especially for, we've got some schools that have, people that aren't qualified to start. They're going to take 6 to 8 weeks, 12 weeks to get their prereqs in order, depending on your programs, whatever that looks like. So you got to know what your run rate looks like. So for me, and it's pretty consistent for most people, is 4 weeks out of a start, you need to be about 50% of your start, depending on the timelines of your programs, of course. But you should be well ahead of your start 4 weeks out, and then 3 weeks out 75, 1 week out 90, and then the week of you should be 110% of your start, because of course you're gonna have cancels and withdrawals. You're gonna have some attrition. You want to be ahead of your number before that week before start, not scrambling to put the last 5 people in, because those last 5 people, you might keep 1 or 2 of them. If we stop doing that, that's good. But then I work that backwards, and I've got all my old spreadsheets. But then you go 6, 7, 8 weeks out, you should be filling, 8 to 12 weeks out, this start here, that's constantly going in. And if somebody really needs to get into this next start, then you can help them do that. What I'm seeing a lot is we're making exceptions. We're taking shortcuts. We're going against what we've said we're going to do as a school to try and fill this start and make this happen, but we're losing people in the process. We're not doing it in the best interest of the student. If we just slow it down a little bit, we start that waitlist mentality, and 8 weeks out, 12 weeks out, we're already putting people in that makes sense for them, that they're excited, they're going through the right process. Those people are coming in more consistently. We're getting more average, like higher deal dollar per sale. We're getting less non-competitive deals, and we're getting people in at the right pace for the business. We just have to have a little bit of patience on the front end.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so you mentioned best interest of the student, right? A couple times now.
Yes.
Is that a difference maker? Right. So like I think of it like intention, and I think about it in terms of like authenticity, credibility, and a really kind of how trustable you are.
Yeah.
So if we accept the notion that the student is in some kind of crisis, right? They're like, this, I got to change my life. It's not working for me. I'm ready. Right. Which is a vulnerable position to be in.
Yeah.
And then you've got some person you don't know who you're now talking to about a potential solution, right? And you're edgy about it. You talked about how they came in smiling, they left crying because they've had an emotional experience with you.
Yeah.
Like, people don't get emotional with people they don't trust, right?
Mhm.
They're just going to get defensive and shut down. They're not going to like let it out. How much of a difference maker, just like to performance, is that mind shift? Like the best, like building it around the best interest of the person, not with some agenda at the end of it.
Yeah, I would say I don't want to minimize it, but it's massive. You know, a well-defined process will always outperform those like haymakers and those people that have this magical skill set. There's a lot of great people in this role that struggle because they don't have good process. And there's a lot of people with great process that forget that there's a person. So they have to go hand in hand. You know, I used to have a quote, it was Mother Teresa, never let anyone leave you without being better or happier. And, you know, I always thought if somebody comes in to see me and I know that I can improve their position by something I can help them with, but I didn't help them do it, then shame on me. I got to get better. So our job is really to get good at asking discovery questions, figuring out what's going on, but digging deep enough that you can connect their real goals to this opportunity, forgetting about, because the information dump is what's killing a lot of people. We're just sharing too much information. We're not sharing insights about how to connect them with this and focusing on the change that they're going through, you know, and really being present for the person in front of us, helping them guide through this. And also at the same time, I think sometimes we're a little bit too nice. We have to. These are people that are trying to make a change, and often they're in a position that they put themselves in, whether on purpose or not, but they need help guiding through this. I ran into one of my old nursing students that I hadn't seen for like 15 years at a pub a couple months back, and she came up and hugged me and said, and her husband came up and said, that was Joe? She's like, yeah, thanks for kicking my butt. Most of my students, when they graduated, said, thanks for kicking my butt. You didn't let me get away with anything. You made me work for it. And that's really, I think, what we're missing a lot is that accountability on the student. I hear a lot of calls where we say, here's all the stuff you need to do. Good luck. Instead of saying, you know, this is what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. Are you going to do that? And putting that sort of will you mentality into it so that we're making them be accountable for what's next. I'm not accountable for you, but I'm accountable to you. Right. So if you're willing to do the work, I got your back, and really helping them see that this is their responsibility to do it, not just one more information session they're going to.
Is that teachable?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
So you can take a team that, you know, let's say they've got okay systems, you know, they've got good hearts. They're maybe a little too procedural in how they're approaching things, and you can humanize or help build those empathy skills and those human being connection skills.
There's small little things like that. Like we did a session last week with a big team, and we did a bunch of role plays on how we're handing students off and how we're presenting like our checklist and our like the prereqs and what they're going to do. And advisors have a hard time, not just like me, having a hard time not talking and just saying, here's all the stuff. and forgetting to get that person to agree. There's like Robert Cialdini, when he talks about the psychology, there was one where they did how they reduce, like, when you go and get a reservation at a restaurant, they reduce reservations from 30 or no shows from 30% to 10%, just instead of saying, please let us know if you need to cancel this reservation, to saying, will you please let us know? And that principle of consistency, where somebody says, I will, they're much more likely to comply. So that's one, when we talk about teaching it, it's not about teaching empathy skills or being a better human. We teach very specific language on when you get to the point where you're booking that call, will you let me know if you need to change this appointment or cancel it? Will you go and do this? When will you do this? And you get the student to say what they're going to do. We embed that in the language. Now the student's taking accountability for the next step, and that principle of psychology of consistency means that they're going to do what they say they're going to do on just a higher percentage. We're just trying to find a percentage here, a percentage there across the whole thing.
Good pivot. Yes, go ahead, Sash.
I was just going to say, for me, the pivot from being very kind of business oriented, business minded, to being much more empathetic was attending or being invited to school graduations to see the outcomes and the emotion in the room. It's contagious, it's palpable, and I think it'll change anybody. In marketing, we talk a lot about credibility and trust signals. I think when you become empathetic, it resonates with whoever you're sitting across from. And I think that is the difference maker. When we're looking for percentage incremental changes, something like that is an easy win.
Yeah.
Agreed. You mentioned leaks, right? A little percentage here, percentage there. Can you talk about where the leaks happen?
I mean, they're a little bit everywhere, right? It's good.
Where do they, what's the most common place they lose momentum? Right, leaks come in when we're
So I'll go from leaks to then where I prioritize energy. I mean, your number one thing is you can't really get back a brand new lead. So most people don't do the best work with brand new leads. This is your first impression, first opportunity to grab somebody. I mean, I used to have, even if I had somebody in my office that was crying in the middle of a meeting, I talked to my admins team to say, come into there was a window in my door, and I'd say, hey, let me know if there's an inquiry on line 1 or 2, be like, can you take it? And they would look at me, I'd say, no or yes, because it's easier to say, hey, give me 1 second to the person I'm talking to be able to handle this person instead of losing them forever. There's like that's a leak right there that I just didn't want that out of my control, taking messages and just losing that initial lead. The next leak that I found is for my priority list was that first appointment post follow-up. I made sure that my appointments usually run 45 minutes. And then at the end of that gives me 15 minutes before my next one, where I can follow up with brand new leads that just happened. Because if I can get to them, if I miss them right away, if I can get to them in 45 minutes, I still got a chance. Right. The other ones are going to be like the first appointment follow-up. So I'm going to send them a thank you card, send them an email. And then the next day, within 24 hours, I'm following up usually with, hey, I forgot to mention this, or just want to see how you made out with that specific thing. And one more thing I want to share with you, just to kind of reduce a little, even if they've got a next appointment booked, just to see where that constructive tension still was. If they're answering my call, they're still interested, there's still a window where I can maintain that interest. Or if they're not and they're fading, I still have a window to recover them. But if I wait 3, 4, 5 days, you usually lose that appointment because something else is taking their attention. Somebody had a conversation with them they don't want to have. And as soon as that conversation happens, that takes priority. So I have to make sure that what I'm doing has priority right after that meeting. And then, of course, making sure that you have a cadence for like the booking calls and post-appointment cadences for emails and calls, that you're just doing that because it's that, that week after, 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, there's a percentage that happens in each one of those weeks. And sometimes it's the longer percentage. Like I have an email that's a guidance email saying, hey, just let me know where you're at. 1, 2, 3, or 4. I get a great response rate on that. So there's that top of the funnel, that post appointment, and the cadence after that just fill in some of those leaks that you got, so that it almost becomes routine and boring, but you got to do the work.
45 minutes seems short.
Tell me why.
Because it feels short.
Feels short.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 33 now. We've done lots.
Yeah, you're right. We have done lots. Okay, yeah. So 40. So that for you,
as an initial appointment,
as an initial appointment
experience.
Yeah.
But more than that, we don't, like, people don't remember all the stuff we're going to tell them, and I think we try and get too much done. right? So we have to say, what do we break that down? Well, how do we open that? How do we set the agenda? And setting the agenda is a primary thing that we do, making sure that we tell them, here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to do over the next time. I'm going to ask you a bit about you. We tell you a bit about us. We're going to go through some of these things that you're looking for, and I'll see what makes sense. And then we'll talk about next steps, right? And that's going to take about 45 minutes and set that frame. And then if you get to the end of that, you don't need to give them more, but just kind of, you have to understand at about 30 minutes, you're starting to phase that appointment out and setting the next steps up. Because whether it's a one meeting close, but a lot of these guys are going to have to come in for a second thing. So making sure we're setting that second thing early, but not getting to 45 and like, all right, that's it for our time, like a therapist. You don't want to do that. You have to set that agenda to make sure they understand. Of course, if it's getting into a bunch of stuff, be willing to go longer, but more is not better. Better is better.
Talk about a little bit about why polite and helpful isn't always enough.
Yeah, polite and helpful is good, but people need help solving problems. So actually, yeah, a good example is Challenger Sales. This is one of the books that I read way back in the day.
Yeah.
This was about, the top performing reps weren't the relationship builders. They weren't the hard workers or the lone wolves, the ones that knew all the answers. They were the ones that were willing to challenge and even be willing to create tension to challenge people's ways that they're looking at things. So if somebody says, I'm doing this for my kids, or I need this, or this is important to me, and then all of a sudden they don't do what they say, are we willing to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to challenge you on that because you said you wanted this. It doesn't feel like you're serious about that.
Right.
And you make them sell to you why it makes sense because we're looking, we're not in the business of making everybody an A student. We want you to be the best version of you that possible. And I'm seeing some gaps in that. Being willing to challenge somebody on their own BS is one of the biggest things you can do to be a monster in admissions because this is about life change. They're not calling you because this is so exciting. Of course, there's people in growth mode and there's people in crisis mode, but people are using this to get to the next level. They're trying to do something, and that means they got to change something, and they're going to have to change a bunch of things. It's not just this decision, but it's the whole rest of their life. So you have an opportunity to help change behaviors, which means you have to be somebody that's willing to challenge them on what they're currently doing.
What's a reasonable amount of time? So, okay, so I've got my admissions team and we're in the, I don't know, 5 to 8% range. We're doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to 10, 12%.
Sure.
And oh, I forgot to mention in our client mastermind group, I asked this. So we do a monthly kind of, I don't know, small round table with some clients just to dig into some issues. And I had asked, okay, what are your expectations on conversion rate? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you budget for? And the consensus was 10 to 12%. That was for the most part.
Yeah.
And we've got clients doing lower, got a few doing better, but
yeah.
And I would characterize this group as like high achievers, right? They're very seasoned, really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
What's a reasonable timeline to change performance in a team?
Usually, I mean, everything I do is usually 90 days. I mean, 90 days is enough to put things in motion, but short enough that you can kind of see the finish line.
Yeah.
I always look to try and get quick wins in 30 days, install some new behaviors, get some ahas where we say, hey, let's make this change quickly so that we're setting that foundation for those 90 days. And after that, then you can start to work on all the other stuff. Everybody's on board. And it's usually you're going to find those people that want to make those changes. My best comment was actually Jessica, who helped me get this saying, is I remember she called me one day and she said, I feel guilty because this feeling too easy. We just put these cadences in place. We're doing all this stuff. My numbers are higher than they've been and I'm working less. I feel like I'm not doing my job now because it's really about not having to work harder, do more, add a bunch of stuff. I know there's lots of training that says do more of this. The job is not to give you more stuff to do, it's to take stuff off your plate. Right? Focus on what makes the biggest impact in these little pieces so that you can focus on this. So the first thing is usually in 30 days is clearing out stuff we don't need to be doing and focus on just the highest converting, like your zone of genius. I'm a big fan of like personal branding. Like, what's your unique style? Why should people come talk to you? I think across the board, a lot of schools just sound the same. So one of the first things we need to create a win is create some personality at the front end. Right?
Yeah.
Just create some excitement and some value in why should I talk to you over somebody else, which is just some subtle language shifts and just paying attention and being attentive on those initial calls, right? Getting more people to come see you at the top of the funnel is an easy win.
Interesting. Okay. Saj, anything to add before we move on? I got a couple more topics.
Um, so I've got some rapid fire questions I'm going to save to the end.
Okay.
Um, I've got so in my experience, at a lot of schools, especially larger teams, you've got the concept of the star rep, right? So they've got one or two reps who seem to carry the team. How should school leaders think about turning what their best reps do naturally into a process the whole team can follow? And you've probably got a whole system around this. And in future talks, I'd love to explore kind of the mechanics of that. But just generally, how do you duplicate or replicate what a star rep does across the team?
Yeah, that's always tough because there's a lot of star reps that become managers too that say, I know it says we should do it like this, but this is how we actually do it. So you got to be careful that you're not replicating star rep behavior in certain areas. I was one of those, but you have to look at making your business process dependent, not people dependent. But the star reps, usually what I see, if you're a really good rep or a really good manager, most of them don't know what they're doing in terms of systems and patterns. So part of that is to find a way to capture those systems and patterns in a way that they go, oh, I didn't, because like I said earlier, they say, well, sometimes it's this and it depends. It's different here. I want to know specifically what does it depend on what's those sometimes. So you want to look at what do they actually do? What are the patterns that they usually use? And then they go, oh, I didn't know that is how I do it, and use them to reinforce best practices. So I would be looking at, how much time do they spend? What do they spend? What do they prioritize? Where do they spend the most time? What are the turns of phrases they use? What are those best practices? Figure out your foundation of best practices. I always say don't mess with those top reps. Don't try and make them change. Where you can, where you can make the biggest impact is in those B-level players. Figure out what you want as a standardized process for your organization, and then have B-level players start to work their way up. If A players aren't following processes and they start seeing B levels nip at their heels, they start to go, well, what are you guys working on? They'll start to adopt some of the stuff, but you don't want to change everybody all at once. You want to make sure that as an organization that you're protecting yourself by building your best practices that you want to have in place, and make sure that your top players are saying, yes, this is how we should be doing it, even if they don't always follow that. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think you're absolutely right in saying that in many cases, star reps don't even know what makes them great. They
Yeah.
don't do that self-analysis, and they're just, they're talented. They're naturally talented. But if we can figure out the patterns that make them great and then apply those to the rest of the team as a system, then that's where the success is.
Mhm.
I have another question, and then Taryn has a question,
I like
which I
that
didn't
question,
get to.
Taryn. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. It just occurred to me, I've always thought about this like, well, how coachable are admissions people? How trainable are admissions people? But it strikes me that this is ultimately a leadership challenge, right?
Mhm.
This requires a lot of thoughtful leadership on how to identify dysfunction, or what are we going to stop, what are we going to start, all that kind of model. How trainable are managers in becoming better at admissions management?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope. You're putting me in a corner here.
Well,
It
okay,
really
so
it
and just
no
I'll
no
set it
no.
up
And
this
I
way. Yeah,
love it though.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Get
So I'll
well.
set it up this way. I am garbage at managing sales and marketing
That,
for our company. I'm really
yeah.
bad at it. I'm bad at training. There's a lot of things I'm bad at. I'm good at some other things, but I've realized I'm really lousy at it because I'm not good at the
Mhm.
thinking through the details and the coaxing out
Yeah.
the stuff. So, are the managers trainable? And if so, what do we do to support them? If not, what needs to happen to
Yeah.
either to support them or bring an outside resource or
Yeah.
something that would help solve this problem?
100%. So yeah, so when I looked at this years ago, because I used to have a challenge when I would enter into with clients and go through the managers. The managers are always going to be protective and going like, I don't want anybody to think I'm not doing my job, because most managers are working their butts off. And especially if they're quota carrying admissions, they got lots of their plate. They're trying to manage all these people. It's an adult daycare. That's what we got to deal with. I was an admissions manager for a long time. But what we want to do is support them and kind of give them. I always say like I'm like Uncle Joe and they're like mom and dad. mom and dad are telling all these kids what they need to be doing and nobody's listening, right? And then also if they're quota carrying, they just got lots on their plate and they don't need more stuff to do and they don't want to be exposed for weaknesses because the numbers are always, somebody's always beating on them. What we want to do is say, okay, especially for like what I do, is when we map out what good looks like, we want to give that playbook, help the reps do that, but we want to give those managers like the teacher's guide. If you're in education, you got a teacher's guide, you got the student guide. They need to have the answers ahead of time so they don't look stupid. For me, when I do my work, I always want to work through the managers, not around them. I don't want them to be participants. I want them to be kind of co-hosts with me, that this is what they're leading with. So they have to believe in the same things and they have to know the answers before the students do, before their team does. And those managers have to go, yeah, if we can do that. And also, how do we take stuff off their plate? If we can just focus on these things, how do we give them back more of their time? Because managers, everybody's always saying, hey, we need more, we need more, we need more. Add this thing, one more button, one more CRM, one more note. You're suck at this. We need more of this. And so as leaders, leaders of managers, we have to say, okay, here's what we're seeing. What do you guys want to spend your time doing? Most managers want to get in the trenches and help their teams. They want to be a part of that. But again, just like what we talked about, they're not sure exactly what they need to do. So we need better tools for identifying what the development plan is for their team so that they can see the energy they put into it actually creates outputs. But most managers are just getting busier and busier and not sure how to actually make the levers pull.
And that would explain why sales trainer admissions training is such a high failure rate.
Yeah.
Right? Because it comes in, you got somebody comes in, hey, do this, don't do that, you got to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, rah team, and it's a day or a couple of days. Yeah, and then nothing, and then everyone's psyched for a day or two, and then it reverts to the mean.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about, even on a 90-day sprint, if it's cultural, right? Like, and involving the managers, so they kind of relearn how to engage with their team, and there's and there's a, I don't know, objective evaluation of, hey, what are we doing great? What we kind of suck at, we could change. What should we not be doing? That whole system is organizational building.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. We have to give the managers a chance to succeed through the process, not be the ones that are to blame for a lack of process, because they don't want more of this. They don't want to bring their team in to an unknown dude like me that comes in and just tells them why they're all wrong. But we have to say, hey, when we've been working on this, this is what we've done. So this is why your mom and dad are right, and just really help support what they're trying to do and start to give them little things that they can win on, small wins, get people celebrating, going, hey, we did it, right? That's all we need, so that we can build the foundation, those quick wins, those 30-day wins, so that we can work on a foundation. But if we do big, complex, here's all the stuff we need to fix, then everybody gets overwhelmed. They go, yeah, we all agree. Like you said, they revert back to the mean, right? So we have to give them something. Hey, same thing. Will you do this these next few weeks? Let's see how this one thing goes, right? That the managers know they can report on to say, hey, this feels good. It should feel good. And be willing as an organization to take the time to let things work.
So we could probably all benefit from an Uncle Joe.
Well, we did it. We did the thing about forming, storming, norming, performing last week too. Just letting people know that change has a system. There are phases of change. Just be willing to go through them, right?
Okay.
And be patient with your team. Don't beat on them when it's not working just yet, because time will get you there.
Okay, we got a little more than 10 minutes. Taryn has a great question. If anyone else has a question, now would be a great time to type it in the little question box there. Taryn has asked recommendations when it comes to personalizing messages versus automated messages. So we really believe in personalized messages, but automated messages would help with lead volume. Moving away from personalization, we're considering that, but in very specific points on our process. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, it's always, you got to weigh the risk reward on that. I'm a big fan of personalization, but when you're dealing with volume, you need to make sure that you have some degree of automation. So you can have hybrid messages, but I think you can have when we look at our booking cadences, your first message should be some kind of marketing, some kind of information that's going to be helpful that you can have that's automated. then there's a difference between sales messages and marketing messages. So being able to differentiate between those, you can have appointment reminders that are automated. There's a lot of stuff you can automate that people are used to being automated on. But when it comes down to let's have a conversation, personalized are going to be important. But before you even talk to somebody, it's really hard to personalize. So our first goal is to get them on the phone where automation can help, right? But where we can have personalized is, the personal branding from your rep. You can have, personality that's in there. If somebody shares with you anything, being able to tap into that, but as part of a messaging sequence, not just leaving it up to reps to figure it out each message. Because if the rep has to sit down and go, what am I going to say right now? That's a leak in conversion, because that's seconds that go by. They should know at every stage, at every point, what do they need to do, so that you can have a combination of completely automated, completely personalized, or a hybrid. But most, even the completely personalized, should follow some kind of framework that you've identified. At this point, when this happens, we do this. So they have maybe some templates and things to pull from, so that I just see too many people are doing good personalized messaging, but there's no process built in place, and there's no standard for the company. So you might have a rep that's doing great messages. Go find out what those are, turn those into templates, get everybody else using very similar shared language, but build the personal branding on top of a good automation system. But when it comes to very like transactional type stuff, automate the crap out of it. But when it comes to talking to people, try and personalize as much as you can.
Saj, opinions?
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. There are some things that have to be automated. There's no getting around that. But with the technology available to us today, it's really accessible to insert personality into automated messaging. So if you've got 3 reps, 4 reps, although they have a whole cadence, a whole series of automated touch points, they can be highly personalized to the personality of each rep. So the reps should and could write their own automated messaging and insert their personality into it.
Yep.
I'm going to jump to one of my rapid fire questions because it's directly relevant to this question, Terrence's question. So what's an optimal lead cadence, do you think, Joe? And should it be customized to an individual social style? For instance, are they analytical? Are they expressive, etc.? In terms of calling, text messaging, email, what do you like to see? What's been effective in your experience?
Yeah, I like, when somebody initially inquires. I mean, you guys have this stuff. Is that speed to contact is always important. Somebody's in front of their computer, they fill a lead form. If you can get to them within 5 minutes, you're golden, because they're sitting right there. So pick up the phone and call them, right? You've got an automation that comes out. You pick up the phone, you call them, and then sending them a text message. But the text message could say, "Hey, that was me that just tried to call you. Is it easier if we text? I'm assuming that you can't talk right now. Is it easier, better if we text?" That's something we can do. Right? Send an email. I'm a big fan of like voicemail, email, texting combos. Right? I don't think anybody listens to voicemail anymore, but still do it, because you get a chance to be personality. You can even do video emails if you want as like a video voicemail. But having some kind of phone, text, email saying, "Hey, this is me who's trying to call you. Here's what we're going to do. I'm your guide. I'm going to help you." Let them know and have some fun with personality. I used to have one of our reps would send a picture of her. "I'm actually a real person. There's me at work today." Stuff like that, right? And getting into that cadence. So that first day, try and get a hold of them, because you say, "Hey, you're trying to get a hold of me. I just want to know what's my best way of getting a hold of you right now. What can I help you with? My role is to do this. What do you need?" That's really that first intention. Give it a couple days or a day, whatever you want to do, however you want to structure that cadence, whatever works for you. But usually a day, 2 days later, do something. 3 days later, 7 days later, just go through this cadence. And some people will get on the phone and be like, "Hey, why are you calling me?" Be like, "You filled out the form." I don't know how many people tell me that happens. You're like, "You're the one that's inquiring. Why are you ignoring me?" But they're getting bombarded by a bunch of schools, especially if they're filling out forms. So your job is to make sure you feel and sound a little bit different. So have some fun. We had one of the ones that we tested once, and then once you have your cadence in place, like your first 30-day booking cadence, and if you get to 30 days and you're not booking, and then something's missing. But usually within 3 or 4 days, you should be able to book a call. At the very least, saying our first call should look like this. I'm going to go through some options, brainstorm with you, and see if it even makes sense for us to get on a call to talk longer. When's a good time to do that? Or shoot me a message on text. What do you want? So just figure that cadence out. One of the ones that one of the reps did is, remember that meme with Robert Downey Jr. where he's rolling his eyes, right? Once we had her cadence dialed and she was testing it, once you have a good foundation, she made one that says, the face that I make when the college admissions lady keeps messaging me, and she started texting that out to people that didn't answer after 3, and that got her like a 95% response rate. They're like, I'm not ignoring you. That's hilarious, right? So having some personality within a well-defined framework is absolutely going to work for you. One of my best ones, I had somebody sent me like when they were trying to sell to me, sent me a video just of crickets chirping. And I was like, okay, that's good, right? Just like people you got to disrupt the pattern and disrupt what the pattern your competitors are doing. When we did mystery shops for my client, I'm like, guys, you suck. Good news, everybody sucks. So we have an opportunity.
I'm wondering if there's like, so there's like the prize fighters don't come from the suburbs kind of principle, right? Meaning we're serving non-traditional students who've got some like, they got some feelings about school,
I
right?
like
That's
that
what they're
statement.
bringing to it, right? And if we're, I don't know, if our admissions team culture is people that, they went to school right out of high school and they did their little degree and they had a traditional education path and haven't lived with like the angst and the uncertainty of like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Kind of, I'm getting behind while my buddies are all getting ahead, but I hated school, like that energy.
Mhm.
Kind of hard to relate to our prospective students,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's why what Saj says is you got to go attend some grads, seeing the
Yeah,
families and the tears and the excitement. I remember when I had reps that were having a hard time selling programs. I'm like, you got to get to a grad. This is where it matters. We're not selling programs. We're selling this experience. This, you changed my life. I can't believe I was able to do it. And it comes from that initial phone call and all the steps and all the things we did and all the kicking of their butt while they were complaining about their teachers and their buddies in the school and all the stuff they were doing in class, all of that stuff for 12, whatever, however months they were in school to that graduation. Be like, holy cow, I did it. And now they're in a job and now they got a whole bunch of other problems. But
yeah.
we're able to help them get those new problems. And that started from that initial, like, hey, I'm just curious about your nursing program. It's a big deal. There's a lot of stuff we got to do to get them there. And we got to take ownership and accountability on it.
Okay, we have time for one question, and then we're going to do a little wrap up. Saj, anything else?
I've got one. It sort of is counterintuitive to what we've been talking about, but it is a question that comes up fairly often. Joe, when do we give up on a lead or a prospect?
Well, whatever you've defined as your system for marketing is cold, and what excuse, right? I think if we have if it's a new lead, I'm a big fan of a 30-day contact strategy. Try and get a hold within 30 days. If you get nothing, I mean, then it's not really worth it. Marketing is cold. Put them in nurture, right? If after a first appointment, you have that, I'm going to call them within 24 hours. I'm going to call them, a couple days later, then 7 days, 14. I've got every week I'm sending them something, then after a month, move it to 45 days, 90 days, 180 days, give them something where you're checking in, but you have an intention of each one. But at some point you mark them as nurture. And one of the things I see a lot of times when we look at pipelines is a pipeline is you're always moving people in, out, forwards, or backwards. And a lot of people have a hard time pulling people out of their pipeline or moving them backwards. They're sitting at this I'm ready to go stage, but we should be sending messages that say, hey, at this point, does it make sense for us to go back and maybe brainstorm? Right? So making sure that we're not trying to constantly just push people forward and then having a big bucket of people that didn't take action. That bucket should be cleared out. If you think of like, outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, we can only handle 150 relationships at a time. We should only have about 150 people we're working at, maximum. We can only handle that. So in, out, forward, or backwards, right? Just making sure we're managing the active people that we can do stuff with, and anybody that's not, put them into a nurture campaign, let marketing work on them until they put their hand up and say, hey, I'm interested. Because there's a lot of people that will come back, but we can't be chasing everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for most schools, they've probably experienced a prospect coming back a year later, year and a half later, 2 years later, and actually enrolling. So it does happen. But without that nurturing campaign, it can't happen.
Wonderful. Okay, hey, we're just about at time, unfortunately, and Joe, this was really helpful. I wish we could see the attendees because I think you'd get a big round of applause. And I think when I say, hey, we definitely have to have you back to talk about this more, we would get big cheers on that.
Let's
So
get thumbs up.
I'm going to assume that's what's happening. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so Joe had put together a bit of a resource guide. We're going to send, hey, we've got a couple, there we go.
Keep 'em
Get
going.
some
I love,
emoji
man,
love on the screen.
feed the ego, baby. Come on. I
Yeah.
love all the emoticons. Let's go.
I remember when, Joe, we were working together before, we were trying to suck you into our world and you resisted us. And we had
Thank you,
pitched
man.
you the Joe Girard School of Admissions Excellence. We created some thing. We're going to start working with Joe some more.
Yeah.
And so, to be determined how, but I think the message you have and your approach to this is really valuable and hugely helpful to schools. So I think in the immediate term, if you have some, I don't know, admissions challenges, want to chat, reach out, we'll connect you with Joe and figure out what might help you. I saw there's one or two other questions. We're not going to have time for that today, but what we'll do is respond to those after this call with some specific thoughts.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm happy to look at any, like, my biggest thing is it's always looking at like what you guys currently have, looking at any mystery shops, any playbooks, any stuff that you have. I get nerdy with this stuff, so anything I can help with, I'm happy to.
Wicked. Don't be a sales weirdo.
That's it, baby.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much. Saj, thank you for your great comments. Everyone, thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.